As he goes through it, don't worry about it, because I'm gonna come up here and I'm gonna break it all the way down from beginning to end. Just so you know, this is going to be a long process. It's gonna take some years, but I want you to understand what we'll be doing as we go through the process. So I will break that down a little bit further than Chris will do in his presentation. But he will hit on it, but I'll break it down a little bit further. Also, just so you know, we will be doing community interviews tomorrow. So if you signed in, if you will let Brenda or either Donica know if you're interested in doing a community interview tomorrow, we will meet you at your home or we'll meet you wherever. The community interviews are usually about 9 questions, and the information from this community interview basically lets us know whether or not you still want to receive things via email or mail. I know the regular mail sometimes can be a little slow, especially if we have natural disasters or bad weather. But if we need to get in touch with you, if you want us to start an email chain, which is easier for us, we can send you digital information. But we can do both. But those are some of the questions that we'll be asking during the community interview process about how best to communicate with you. Would you like more information? What types of information would you like? So if you're interested in doing that short survey, we can talk to you tomorrow, or if you want to fill it out yourself tonight, we have them back in the back. But feel free, if you want to go into further discussion, we'll be available on tomorrow during the day to talk to you guys. So I'll turn it over to Chris.
All right, thank you, Tanya. Thanks everyone for coming out tonight. Got some information to share with everyone here. So if anyone has any questions as we're going through this process, just feel free to kind of raise your hand. We can stop and talk about it at that point. It'll be a little bit easier. For those who don't know, my name is Chris Jones, and I work for the Superfund program of the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. EPA's Superfund program is responsible for cleaning up some of the nation's most contaminated land and responding to environmental emergencies, oil spills, and natural disasters. Previous activities at the site have released hazardous chemicals, which qualify the Galey and Lord plant site to be on the list of contaminated sites where EPA is taking steps to reduce and eliminate exposure to hazardous chemicals. So that's what we're going to talk about a little bit today. Go to the next slide. All right, so the Superfund remedial branch is focused on remedial activities associated with Galey and Lord plant site, which is about a 234-acre former textile mill and finishing plant. This kind of yellow border is actually the property line, so it's a fairly large area. There's many structures on the property. Some of the main features include 2 plant buildings, with plant 1 being over on this portion. It's about 700,000 square feet. And then you got plant 2 on the back side of the building. That one's about 250,000 square feet. So they're pretty large buildings. Additionally, you've got boiler house, water sludge ponds, coal pile runoff, a wastewater treatment plant. And the wastewater treatment plant consists of several basins, tanks, clarifiers, former sand beds, and a fluid measurement sampler. So they had a pretty large process going out here, a lot of activities. So those were some of the areas that we're going to be focused on that potentially release some of these contaminants into the environment. All right, so operations at the plant site began in 1966 and included dyeing, finishing, surface treatment of cotton and synthetic fabrics. As a result of these textile operations, the wetlands and sediments of Cedar Creek and the Great Petey River have become contaminated with metals, perfluorooctanic acid, and perfluorooctane sulfonic acid. So these things you may have heard of as PFOA or PFAS. Some of the stuff is in the news now. There's what's called 4 other chemicals. Wastewater was the textile industry's largest waste stream. The waste generated from textile manufacturing at the site was treated in the wastewater treatment plant on site. Can't really see it in this picture, but it's over there next to the Great Petey River. The wastewater moved through the series of basins undergoing pH adjustments and biological and physical chemical treatments. The wastewater treatment basins are located adjacent to the Cedar Creek and the Great Petey River. The facility used a degreasing and dewaxing agent known as trichloroethylene, or TCE, which is a chlorinated solvent. This chemical contaminated the soil and groundwater. South Carolina DHEC requested that the facility address this contamination back in 1999. And in 2003, the potential responsible party, which we call it the PRP, if you hear me say that later, they installed soil vapor extraction system and recovery wells. In 2015, the PRP entered into a voluntary cleanup contract with the state. About 3 years later, the facility was abandoned and the voluntary cleanup contract was terminated, and in 2017, for basically failure to complete the work. In 2018, South Carolina DHEC's site assessment team began their investigative work at the site to see what else remains. So from 2018 to 2019, South Carolina DHEC conducted multimedia environmental sampling, meaning that they obtained potential source area samples from soils, sediments, surface water, groundwater. These samples were collected from the wastewater treatment basins, Cedar Creek, the Great Pee Dee River, and wetlands along Cedar Creek and the Great Pee Dee River. Groundwater samples identified PFOA and PFOS, which are those forever chemicals, as well as chlorinated solvent contaminants. The wastewater treatment basins contain PFOA, PFOS, and various metals. These same hazardous substances, cadmium and mercury, were also detected in the wetlands along Cedar Creek and the Great Pee Dee River, indicating that a release had occurred or was still occurring from the Galey plant facility. So if you see the orange arrows there on the, might be the left picture, this is kind of the flow of contaminants across the site. You've got the wastewater treatment plant on this side. Oops. Lost it. So this material over here can flow this way to the Great Pee Dee River. You had some sludge drying fields back here, and that property kind of slopes towards the north, towards the Great Pee Dee River in that direction. So that's how we suspected contaminants have gotten into both the creek and the river there. Next slide.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
When all of this that you were talking about was contamination and everything else, what about all the water that we're having at the property that we're having now, with everybody having the bowl and water and everything else? Is that the problem that we're having, that is occurring at this time?
So you're talking about the groundwater,
Yes.
your drinking water?
Yes.
Yeah, so there's actually two different sites going on here. So we have the plant site, which is what we're dealing with here. So we're kind of strictly dealing with the plant site and the contamination around there, and kind of think about it as a continuous area, right? So if I've got contamination on the property, we will chase it as far as it goes from that point. Through the year, through past operations, the facility was allowed to take some of the material that they generated on site and take it to agricultural fields in the area. So as you see a little bit later in the presentation, as we're kind of showing you the steps of the life cycle of a site, we currently have the removal side of EPA is dealing with the contaminated groundwater in residents' drinking water throughout the county of both Darlington County, Marlboro, and Chesterfield. Yeah.
Chris, can I say something, man? Are you talking about whenever we had the boil water advisory just a few weeks ago when they had the fire down there?
No.
Okay, because that's totally different than what they're doing. You know, they don't have nothing. There's nothing to do with that from what happened with the water. The only reason we had a boil water advisory is because they drained all the water down. So it was only a precaution. The water wasn't contaminated. The water wasn't bad that we were using. The only reason that we had that is because the water pressure dropped down, and that's what Darlington Water and Sewer Authority requires for it to happen. There was no contamination in the water as far as coming from the plant. It was none of that. So I know that there was a lot of concerns, and if that is a question, they're here strictly to clean up the plant, clean up the soil, clean up the water, clean up the animals. Okay, so it's the boil water advisory that we had a few weeks ago from the fire they're not here because of that. They're here because of, like he said, since what, 2018 y'all been cleaning, right?
Well, yeah, I guess in 2016 is when the facility shut down. We started investigation, or DHEC started investigating around 2017, 2018.
Yeah, and they hauled a lot of stuff out of there, because I live right there. They have to come down my road. They pass in front of my house when they hauled all that stuff out. That was in the tanks, and anywhere above ground, they hauled all that stuff out. The sludge pits, they hauled all that stuff out, correct? And that's what you
Well,
just
not the
spoke about.
sludge pits, we hauled
Okay.
out the waste material, the hazardous waste. So there were some drums on site, there were dyes, there were a lot of acids and caustic material, so things with high pHs and low pHs. All that material was taken off-site back in 2019, so that was the stuff that was a larger threat to the environment if it
But why
were
did
to
it take you
release.
so long in order to tell us though, if you was taking it out then?
Well, so that was an emergency response. That was an emergency response where we had to remove those chemicals, so those are no longer
But
a
I still
threat.
feel like the public should have been inquired about. That's something that we should have been inquired. You went now.
Well, so it's a different type of process. So think of that was an emergency response where an action needed to be taken quickly.
I still feel that that's a public environment. This is the environment. Now you come to tell us, how do we still feel like there's
Okay.
no harm?
Oh, well, I think what, I agree with you, you probably should have been informed. Yes, that was, usually-
We have had people that have died from cancer, other kind of environment. We don't know that this isn't no harm.
Usually-
You're telling us one thing, and now we get informed now. How do I know?
Well,
I have had plenty of people that died of cancer.
ma'am,
Live down that road, and you sit here, what, 15 or 20 miles in Carlton and everything else?
ma'am, we're talking about two different things and two
Yeah.
different processes.
Yeah.
And I agree that you probably should have been informed about the first
And I
one,
am sick
but
right
that is a different process under emergency response. Under this particular process that we're talking about tonight is a
And
remedial
who is it-
response.
And who is it for? You don't
I
know who is
can't point the finger at anybody, but what you're talking about as far as the sludge is concerned, if you want more information and you want a contact person, I can give that to you. But that is not what we're talking about with the plant site. That's a different process and a different,
But I feel like when FDA and everything else is informed, we, the public, should be informed.
I agree with you.
Don't come later.
No,
Because
I agree
don't
with
feel
you.
like- I don't feel like y'all really giving us all the information. You just giving us what you feel, like you feel that is what you want us to know, but you're not giving us all of the facts.
no ma'am, we're giving you everything that we know.
No,
And if you
that's
ask a question that we cannot respond to, I promise you we'll follow up.
Okay.
And you can put my name on that. So we're giving you everything that we have at this time. There's a lot of stuff that we don't, there's a lot of stuff that we don't know. And I'm gonna put that out up front. There's a lot of stuff that we don't know, and we'll tell you we don't know.
Yeah, and that's
But
what this
as we go,
process
and
here is
that
gonna
is what
find
the
out.
process that we're talking about now, that as we go through the process, we will have more meetings like this to provide you with the information that we get as we go through this process.
Yeah, but because I feel like with us being the public, we don't need a whole lot of this where you giving us a whole lot of it, where it be bogged down and then we can't understand it. Like it be what, give us direct questions and then give us answers. Don't boggle it down in a whole lot of Democratic or Republican things where we can't understand.
No,
Give us
ma'am.
direct answers.
No, ma'am,
Don't
that is
play
not,
it out.
that is not what we're trying to do. What we're trying to do tonight is give you an introduction to what we know already.
Okay.
And
That's
then
what
that
they
is
want.
why at the beginning of the meeting, I said we have community interviews. So if there's any information that you want to know or need to know,
And that's why
we
I
have
have
the questions back there. You can provide what you want to know, how you want to get it.
Thank you.
Now, can I just say one thing? Look, as the mayor of this town and as a homeowner and a citizen that lives right down the road from this, and I can see that mill from my house, okay? And I'm just as concerned as you are about the health of the people that's been here, because I haven't been here that long, so, and I don't know what it's doing to me. But these guys, they're here to help us. They're not here to hurt us. And I understand your concerns. Why wasn't we informed when they was running those trucks in front of my house? I got the paperwork right back there where they sent me the letter in 2021 saying they took out 100,000 gallons of this, 53,000 gallons of this, barrels of this and barrels of that. You know, right in front of my house. Anything could have happened. The truck could have run off in the ditch and it could have leaked all out. But these guys are here to help us, to find out exactly what's going on and to know exactly what our water table is, the air quality or whatever that, a lady asked me about that today, about the air. Is it in the air? So that's going to be something that, is it or is it not? You know, that's going to be a question. Is it just in the ground? Is it just in the water? Is it just in the animals? Because that's what they're testing here. They are testing to make sure that the ground in the area at that mill is good. okay? The sites that he's talking about that they've been doing is sites in the 3 counties, Marlboro, Darlington, and Chesterfield County, the sites where they was dumping the sludge, okay? And that's a lot worse than just having overfill in the.
So they weren't necessarily dumping
right?
it, they were using it as, for agricultural purposes, so it had to be.
Okay, I got you, right.
I've got a question.
Well, hold on one second, we have the lady in the back.
So long before it comes to service, to let everybody know about this.
Sometimes, I mean, there's a process of discovering that some of this material exists. You know, we don't know. I don't have a book of records showing where all hazardous chemicals are. You know, a lot of it takes, you know, the community knowing what's going on there. You know, other people kind of, you know, talking to the local representatives, talking to the state, and doing investigative work to find out, you know, has there actually been a release? You know, are there any health impacts? You know, so once we find out about those certain things, that's when we come to take action. And if we find out that we have a concentration of something that is high enough that it's going to impact, you know, human health, the environment, we act at that point in time. You know, just like, you know, to your point earlier, when we found out there were hazardous chemicals there that could potentially be released, we did something at that moment in time. You know, we didn't wait on it, right? So now we've got stuff that's subsurface and we don't know where exactly everything is. And so that's what this investigation is going to find out. You know, so I'll tell you what we know and what we don't know as well.
So that's the reason why y'all closed the plant down and didn't let.
No, we had nothing to do with that. That was the plant owner, the plant operator, they handled that whole thing.
Y'all didn't let nobody know about it. When the fishes was dying and everything.
The what?
When the fishes was coming up to surface, y'all didn't stop, don't waste, put y'all wasting.
We have no knowledge of that. I'd say I have no knowledge of that.
This is a total different, when the mill was running and things were happening, it's total different from what these guys are. They're on the cleanup, they're Superfund. They're actually come to clean up, to help the town, to help the community, to find out what's going on in the ground, at the groundwater, with the animals. There's gonna be a lot of testing that they're gonna be doing to see what the severity of at the mill, at the plant, and how far out does it go. Okay, so that's what they're doing. They're helping us, y'all.
Yeah,
I mean,
I
don't
cannot-
beat them up, please, because they're not here to hurt us. They had nothing to do with the plant doing what it was doing, okay?
Yeah,
They-
I
what
cannot-
they- look, can I just,
This is the reason the plant shut down, the board is cleanup.
no, the reason the plant shut down is they moved everything overseas, correct?
The board is cleanup while the plant shut down. If you had a $20 million cleanup, you had to move it overseas, you move it overseas too. That's the reason the plant shut down, was the board cleaning this up.
I'm not
If they
gonna,
would have stepped in before the plant shut down and helped with the cleanup, when the plant was still here, we probably still had the plant.
yeah, but that's the owner's responsibility. That's not, the EPA.
Listen,
Go ahead.
let me explain something. When we go through this process, we're just EPA. You have to understand that there are different entities that are responsible for different parts. When you talk about fish kill and fish cleanup, you need to talk to your state or your health department. When you talk about the operating facility and the permitting, that's RCRA, that's Reservation Conservation, that's a whole different program. When we come here to talk about what we're trying to do now, it's a whole different process. So if you guys want information on those things, that's a different entity, it's a different program of EPA and also with the state. So I understand your concerns about all of that and it all kind of works together, but it's 3 different processes.
Who is the proactive arm of this EPA? Who is the proactive? Y'all are the reactive. Who's the proactive?
Actually, we are partially proactive. I can't really say that we're reactive because we're stepping in where we have authority. The parts that you're talking about is not our program. So we could not react or be proactive in that because we don't do the permitting, we don't shut down places, we don't do the fish. That is not our program.
The EPA came to our farms, or somebody did, and said it was safe to put this crap out.
That's a different program. That
Is
is
it
not
with
super,
EPA
that is
or
not,
not?
it's EPA, but you understand, listen, EPA got different programs.
Yeah.
EPA has an air program, they got a water program, we got RCRA, we got Superfund, we got, intergovernmental, there are many programs. I'm not gonna say it wasn't EPA, but it was not this program. So we would not be able to answer those questions because it's not Superfund.
Can you put us in contact with who could?
I will take it back and ask them. what program it was.
So-
So if you have those questions, make sure you give it to Donica or either Brenda, and we will try to find out who that was. I can't say that it was not EPA, but it was a different program.
Okay.
So I just want to be clear that there are different roles and responsibilities for every part of EPA. So-
Really what it all boils down to is, the other ones, they messed up, and then you wanna come here and you wanna clean it up.
I can't necessarily say that they messed up. I can't document that anybody messed up. All I can document is that we're here tonight to talk about this plant facility that we would like to clean up and make sure no one will be affected by it.
The other ones,
What happened?
They failed on this.
What happened at the plant, I cannot say. I have no knowledge of that. I can't say who shut it down, who ran it, who permitted it. We don't have any of that information. That is not, we can't answer those questions.
The other ones, they dropped the ball, and y'all wanna come here and y'all.
I can't answer that question.
Y'all gonna do y'all part to clean.
I'm gonna accept that as a statement, but I can't answer that question. I can't confirm or deny.
I got a
Why don't we go on with the program?
Yeah, I'm gonna take her question in the back, and I'd like for him to finish the presentation so you guys can understand what we are here to do, if you don't mind.
Y'all gonna clean up the plants, right? So y'all gonna tear all that stuff down at site, all those, both those sites, y'all like, clean it up like that, y'all gonna try to expand it down, clean all that.
We're gonna clean up the contaminants. We may or may not tear down the building. So we're chasing the contaminants. And so if there's nothing in the building that is threatening the public or the environment, then we wouldn't tear that down.
Chris, can I ask you, why you had that map up before she changed it? I'm over the local fire department, and you can answer this afterwards if you want to. Is there anything that we need, we've had some fires down there lately, y'all know, you've down there seen it.
Yeah.
Maybe a list of what we need to watch out for, more of the hotter spots right now, it seems to be a hotbed down there, we're running into the calls.
Yeah, so no, all the hazardous material has been taken off site. The contaminants lie on the surface water, the sediments, the soils, and the groundwater on site. So as long as you are not digging a hole and, in our property, you're gonna be okay. In a nutshell. So to kind of answer your question before, I would try to explain it as, think of it like a tanker truck that overturns in your front yard. I can't predict where it's gonna overturn, if it's gonna overturn, how it's gonna overturn. It happens, and we're here to try to find out where all the contaminants were in that tanker truck to clean up your yard. That's what we're trying to do, right? I had nothing to do with that truck before this point in time, and that's where we are right now. I had nothing to do with anything before this point. We're here now to try to make it better, because there's been a release, and we're trying to make this property, this community better by cleaning it up. That's our ultimate goal here.
Who's here with law? Who's it belong to? And who's here with law?
So there is a property owner, and so we are currently in negotiations with them to fund the cleanup of this.
Who is the property owner? I can't be a property owner and taxes for 6 years.
Say that again?
If I didn't pay my taxes 6 years ago, it wouldn't be my property anymore. That's why I'm curious, whose property is it? Who is it? That piece of property down there, who pays the taxes on it?
I don't believe that they are paying taxes anymore. I think that they walked away.
Somebody got the owner.
Yes, someone does own it, and we are going after them to fund the cleanup of this.
So you want Garland County?
What?
Garland County on it?
No.
So if I don't pay my taxes, so if I don't pay my taxes, that's a different problem.
This one's not
So
working.
nobody.
So you think it's $3 million behind the property taxes, they're gonna pay?
But all the- all
Switch
the-
may be off on
if
the,
I
Say it
don't
again.
pay taxes,
There's $3 million worth of property tax over in that place, I think. If they ain't paying that, what makes you think they're gonna pay you?
That's not my area. I'm
You said you
here.
were working with a property owner waiting on
I'm not, we as the collective EPA, there are attorneys that are pursuing that. I don't do any of that, I don't get into the legal part, I'm here for the contamination, to get it clean. Someone else handles the legal.
Who's gonna end up with it once it's deemed safe?
Who's the what?
Who's gonna end up with the property once it's deemed safe?
That's not my call.
Because Darlington County still by for, 6 years and they took it? I don't pay my property tax, he don't pay his property tax, they sell our house.
Can I say something?
Just because this is upside down.
And I'm federal EPA, not,
It ain't right,
I don't
y'all
feel
told
that.
me to spend $20 million cleaning it up in Darlington County, end up with it.
Okay, but-
As bad as I hate the federal government, I'd rather see the federal government end up with it than Darwin County, they putting the money into it, because it ain't right. You don't pay your property tax on your house.
They're gonna take it, I know, but listen to
Just
me.
because they're upside down, this one don't matter.
It don't matter, that's right, but this isn't, hold on a second, this isn't what, hold on, just 1 second, please.
It says regulations were counted, this thing.
Okay,
What I'm
right.
paying for is what's gonna happen to the property when it's over.
But you see, they,
Darwin County, thieving, they're stealing it, ain't what you have.
yeah, but this isn't about the property, y'all, please listen.
Hey, hey.
Thank you.
Listen. I understand y'all got questions, and like I said, if you have questions that we can't answer tonight, we would take those questions back and we would try to get answers. But I really would like for you guys to finish listening to what we have to present, just in case somebody else has some questions. And then if there are questions after we finish presenting that we cannot answer, I would happily take it back to the agency. But I don't want you guys to miss out on understanding what this process is about because we're stuck on one thing for a whole 30 minutes, okay?
Thank you.
They don't give a shit about the town or the environment.
Talk to them.
If they're here, they're back where they started in 2018.
Okay, so once we became aware of what was on site, so we had DHEC that came out here back in 2017, 2018. They did their investigation work. They reported back to us their findings. So we, or DHEC communicated their findings to us, and then so we, as in the EPA, conducted a removal site evaluation in February 2019, an emergency response in March of 2019, and then a time-critical removal action in May 2019. So as soon as we kind of found out about that information on what was on site, we came here, we acted, and we got rid of this material. The Galey and Lord plant site was then finalized to the Superfund NPL in March 17th of 2022, so last spring. So from that point, from March to November, we coordinated with the Agency for Toxic Substances and Disease Registry, which is ATSDR, and initiated the public health assessment, which is currently ongoing at this moment. Then we also prepared what's called a special notice letter to notify the liable parties of their potential liability, and submitted those to the PRPs in November of 22 as well. So right now, as I mentioned before, we are currently negotiating with these liable parties, but this is a slow process. But as I stated before, we have found out that there is contamination here, and we don't want it to sit on the sidelines while we try to negotiate with the PRP to obtain funds to do this work. So we acted on this, basically having a contamination here, so we acted and we obtained funding through the agency to continue this work so that we can actively clean and remediate the property while we go through the negotiations. So, as mentioned, they haven't paid their taxes, they may or may not have money. Our lawyers and the attorneys are going to find that out, but for now, we're here, we're gonna try to clean this up until we get the money from them. All right, so our primary concerns, in 2019, EPA removed the hazardous chemicals that remained on site. However, those impacted media remained. Based on previous investigations, the exposure to contaminated groundwater, surface water, and sediments is the primary concern for human health and the environment. Cedar Creek and the Great Petey River, adjacent and downstream to the site, include fishery, wetlands, and critical habitat for endangered species, recreational areas as well. There's a potential threat for human health through the consumption of fish and accidental ingestion of water. So, like I mentioned before, that migration pathway, contaminants have gotten in the river, so that's what we're going to try to address, these contaminants on site, so there are no longer dishes to the creek and the river, so that we can return this back to its natural state and everyone can fish and eat the fish as well. All right, so here's what we're doing now. So right now, our next steps include the remedial investigation and the feasibility study. The remedial investigation serves as a mechanism for collecting data to characterize the site conditions, determine the nature of the waste, assess human health and the environment, and then conduct treatability testing to evaluate the potential performance. So essentially, we're trying to find out what's here, where it's located, and what can we do to remediate it so that we can return it back to the community. So we'll end up kind of creating a 3D model. That's going to be one of the first things that we do to find out where all the contamination is, so that we can design a way to remediate the contaminants on site. So both these kind of go hand in hand. The remedial investigation is going to have data that's going to feed into the feasibility study, and then the feasibility study may have come back with some results where we have to do a little bit more investigation for the remedial side of things. So the point of what I'm trying to get at is this is kind of a longer process. This is a big site. There's a lot of contaminants possibly out here, so it's going to take some time before we have all the answers, right? And if we, along the way, if we find really high concentrations or there's a really elevated significant risk to human health and the environment, we will take action at that point. We can always, we have in our pocket to do another emergency response to where perhaps maybe we remove some soils off site if that is a potential source area and has really high areas. So a lot of this could be kind of risk-based, but like I said before, if we find stuff that's really high and really threatens human health, we will act at that point in time. It just kind of, this is a little bit of a longer process. It's not just us kind of going out there on a Tuesday, grabbing a handful of samples, and we're not going to know the whole story. It's going to take a little bit of time.
Sir, can I ask one question, please?
Sure.
Our property actually joined the property down there. Going back to the fish, I can say my husband had a pond, and the pond is actually flipped and all the fish is floating on the top. He drove a log truck and, a lot of mornings going down, he said, you will not believe what was shooting out of that water into the river. The point I really want to ask, health-wise, that's what really bothers me. I have 5 members in my family, and our land joins, 5 different ones of us has had cancer. Could any of that have came from any of this? That's all I want to know.
I wouldn't be able to answer that question, but if you want to see us afterwards, we can get you into contact with ATSDR. Like I said, they're out here now talking to the community, and they can provide you a lot better information than I could.
My brother had it, my daughter had it, my husband had it, and I had it. And we all live in joint, so, and this has been going on some years back, so we've been inhaling and doing a lot of this years back, and really didn't know about it, really. I mean, it's not your fault, so that's what we were doing. And we made it. That's all I need to know, thank you.
Yeah, next question.
Yes, I was worried about this last year, I mentioned to you last year about those 2 school buses that go down there every day, in the morning and at night, turn around. And they go right in front of that path, the whole road. Is there any way you can notify Galey County about the school buses, the safety of those children? Why have us put it in new out those buses? Because I can't tell you what I'm doing. Those kids are coming from Dollar Tree, and they're coming from right here, and they're riding through there every day.
So the school bus is driving through the site?
Yeah.
The road, like it's closed up, that road, the school buses are on that road. Do this is last year, I went to this last year.
If the school bus is driving on that road, they're not being exposed to anything right now.
Sure.
Yeah.
You make one, I know this.
Oh, 1 second. Good.
Oh, sorry.
Yes, so about the PD River and the creek, is there contamination in the PD River? And why haven't they stopped people from going down there and fishing? Because people have been continuing to go down there and fish down at the PD River.
I may be wrong, but I think there are signs up. Do you know, maybe? Okay.
Break it down, any signs up?
They're gone now. There were signs up about 2 years ago. Saying only so much fish, so it's probably related to this.
Who took the signs down?
I guess so.
Oh.
They were right there between the land and the parking lot at the grass strip. Where the grass
Yeah.
goes up. And I know this is a little bit off, you said something, the sludge that come out was really farm field. Is that another word? I know that's a little bit different than you live. I'm more worried about that to a point, there was a lot of that hauled to the fields right here. Is that being shaped by the different offices?
There was a whole process to handle the sludge. The plant had to go through a sampling process for all the material that went out. and they documented it as well. So we have data on that material and where it went, which is kind of what's helping us identify where some of these homes, these residential wells are, that we're sampling right now. So yes, they had to sample it for what they knew at the time. And I think the main concern for anything coming off of there would be some maybe volatile organics and metals. And I think they had to I think of the sludge, they had a sample for the metals and maybe nitrogen content as well, because I think that's what the farmers wanted to know.
Is there a number or some information that we can talk to someone that can tell the people that had stuff dumped on their land, whether it's, what's the process with their land? Is there something in the EPA, right? Is that what you want to know? You want to know your land, right?
I'd like to know about the land. I'd like to know if the water is safe for my cows to drink, if the cow meat's safe for me to eat. Because up in Maine, they're taking whole farms away from people because they're loaded down with it. It's in the soil, it's in the plants, it's in the animals, it's in the milk.
But my question to you, Chris, is there a number, just like you told, yeah, not you, the other lady. Yeah, you told her that you had somebody that you could put her in contact with for the health of her family and her.
Yeah.
So is there a number or a person that we can put these people with the land in? Because that's a lot of what I hear. It's about your health and it's about the land that you had where stuff was dumped on. So is there some people that they can get in contact
Yeah,
with?
if those folks want to come see us afterwards, then we can provide information for who's running that site, and we might be able to find, what you're looking for from that aspect. And then from your point as well, if you're worried about the health of your cattle and drinking water, there's actually been a lot of studies done with PFAS, PFOA, and cattle, and I believe all that information is on the agricultural site, the Department of Agriculture, I believe. I think they're the ones who have some of that data. They would be able to provide answers to what your questions are.
I've been looking for about 3 years, and I have yet to find it. I find everybody's shutting down because they.
All right, well, we'll give you your contact information, and I'll get those papers for you and send them to you. All right, so where are we? All right, we're on the last slide. All right, so here's kind of a brief in a nutshell, the whole process, the Superfund process of what we're doing. We had talked about before emergency responses, that happens way down here. This is kind of what DHEC did, South Carolina, yeah, DHEC. They started here, they did their investigation, they found out some information. We determined that there was a substantial evidence that we would be able to list this property, so we went through the listing process. And now here we are in this process, we're going to do the remedial investigation. So this is going to kind of complete where everything is and then what we can be able to do to treat it. After that, when we get all that information, we will document our findings and our justification for selecting a particular remedy, which is this ROD, which is called Record of Decision. So I'm anticipating that we just got someone under contract right now, actually this month. So now we're going to officially start the RAFS. Right now, we're kind of in the planning phase of that process, so I would anticipate, maybe 3 to 6 months for us to kind of go over all the historical data, prepare our plans, and our approach to sample this material, and from there they will, there's going to be kind of multiple sampling events, throughout the entire year and probably into 18 plus months. So it's usually about an 18 to 24 month process to do this part. And then after that, it takes usually about 9 to 12 months to prepare the record of decision. And at that point, that is when the remedy will actually go into place. So, as we mentioned before, this isn't a super quick process. We move as quick as we can, but there's certain steps that we have to go through. And we have to check a lot of boxes. Plus, we need a lot of data to be able to make, the right call. So, I would anticipate by around 2026, we will be documenting the record of decision, which is what we're going to be doing for our remedy to clean up the site, and maybe another 6 to 12 months to get someone under contract, and then to actually design it and then implement the remedy for the site. So that's just kind of what I want to reiterate here, is that it's not a super quick process, that this takes a little bit of time to go through these steps. I think Tanya will take a little bit more. There's a whole bunch, there's like 50 steps in between each one of these that is not shown on this picture to get here. This is a very simplified version. So that's kind of what I want to say about the site and what we're doing here at this moment in time. I hope that was useful and gives everyone a better idea of what we're going through right here. You know, feel free to ask us any questions. We're here to help you. You know, we ultimately want to return this property to the community so that you can have a place, you know, to go to and enjoy, so that it's not this desolate, broken down building.
So the first question back here on the left.
Yes. Long years ago, I don't know, but I think the pollution used to be smelling like something dead, like cabbage or whatever it is, the whole town. And nothing like going towards Chelsea, County, and it's like it smells so bad. You can smell it through the car, and when the roll up at night, any day. So what is thinking that pollution and pollute the whole city, society, Darwin County, Chesterfield County, Water County, and stuff. So it had to have some kind of chemical flowing out, people was getting when they was running the plant. So if it was running, it was running the plant, it was polluting the air. So what it was doing to the people inside the plant.
I don't know the answer to that question. I don't know if they had any air emissions or not. So I don't know. I don't know anything about
But
that.
it might have been going in the plant, it might have been going out the plant, coming into the, and then air polluting the whole town.
Ma'am, that would be just like, Miss Edmonds, God, I'm sorry. That would be just like Miss Edmonds' question about her family being sick, okay? So anybody that's got family that's been sick, family that's had cancer, or if you have, they do have someone to put you in contact with, okay? That way you can get that information, okay? So anybody here that has family or is concerned about their health, see them after, and they will get you the number, okay? If you have a problem with your land, if you think your land's bad, yes, ma'am. I know. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Hold on, I saw her back here.
Yes. You said you had been tested on the Marlboro County side and up Chesterfield. Is there a website, a map that I can see where you tested? And also where the agricultural sludge was spread on agricultural land?
What we can do is that there's a project manager that's separate, like we said, from this site, that's totally handling the sludge side because it was an emergency response. We can either take your questions and have Sadar to call you back if you want him to call you specifically, or if it's general information, what we can do is take some of the questions that you all are asking tonight. And what we do plan to do is that from this meeting, we will update our website and provide some additional information, including the slides from this presentation. So I understand you guys want contact for the health aspect, which is Agency for Toxic Substance Disease and Registry, which is ATSDR. You want something about the agriculture, Chris is gonna get that information from Department of Agriculture to talk about that, and we will also give you the contact for the sludge side. This is not the sludge side, this is totally the plant facility.
Yeah, and I would add to that most of the sludge fields were in kind of the Darlington County, the northern part of Darlington County, kind of in between. I think if you kind of go south, halfway between here and Florence and northward is where the bulk of it is. Just to kind of give you an idea.
What about the testing you said you have done in Marlboro County?
There's only a handful of sites that are outside of Darlington. So there's roughly about 304 total fields that this was taken to, and there's about maybe 10 or 12 that are not in Darlington County. And all those are kind of, they would be on the south side of Marlboro, you know, a little bit closer to the plant.
Chris, what is your major concern as far as the plant site? Now, I know you're telling me most everything's out in the buildings when y'all got it, but what is your major concern? What is it, what's there that's making y'all want to go in and get out when y'all can?
So it's the surface water and the sediments that are on the plant property. That's where most of the residual contamination remains. And so as you have rain events and flood events, that is the threat of release of these contaminants from getting off site.
So hurricane 4 years ago when it flooded, I was down there so bad and.
Yeah.
I realize this is
is a long process. Can you give a better breakdown of your timeline? What can we expect? Can we expect to see something going on there between now and 2026?
Oh yeah, so we will be out here, you'll see me and my team out here a lot more going forward. I would anticipate around March, that's kind of my goal, is by March of next year that we will be out here collecting data, collecting these samples so that we can construct our conceptual site model and get an idea of what is present on site, where it's located, how it migrates to the subsurface, and what can we do to remediate it, and so there's no longer a threat of release to the public, or there's no longer a risk of the public being exposed to anything there. So that's what this next process is going to be. So we'll not only be collecting samples of the soil and the water and the surface water and the groundwater, we're also going to be looking at the birds, insects. We'll be collecting those to see are these smaller organisms like the worms that are in this material, are they taking up these chemicals, and then are the birds that are eating these worms, is that getting into them that way as well, right? So we're going to be looking at all of that. Which is partly why this is a longer, long-term process. So we're evaluating, how humans are going to be impacted by this, and as well, how is the environment and the organisms that live in this environment are being impacted by it.
So you're gonna be collecting samples until 2026? Yeah.
In simple terms, yeah.
Question right here.
Yeah.
My question is, I worked up at Galey North for 28 years. So my concern is during those 28 years, drinking water, working in that plant, should I be concerned about my health?
That would be an ATSDR question. I wouldn't be able to answer that.
But he'll give you the information.
I can get you the people,
person to get in contact
and
with.
then they can talk to you and help you with that.
It sounds like to me, they need to have a meeting down here.
Well,
They're
that's what I'm getting ready to go into right now. I'm getting ready to go into the full process and what we can do.
They started their work in January of this year here doing their human health assessment.
I wanna know, if we have all these agencies, and y'all came down here, I understand the fact that y'all are coming here to help, but to me, I feel like this should have been one person out of all of these agencies should have been, because I feel that right now,
Hold that right there. I'm getting ready to get into all of that. That's why I said if y'all give us a chance to finish, some of your questions will be answered when we finish the presentation. Right here.
I want to clarify something, and I'm not here as an expert on the area, but I feel like the county, in economic development, but I want to clarify something about the taxes. I don't want anybody to leave and feel like Darlington County is remiss and not. So our administrator, I just want to make sure we're on read one thing. So if you have specific questions, they can be addressed to the county, but I just want to clarify one thing as far as the tax sale. So if property does not sell at a tax sale, the forfeited land commission could take possession of the property, and then all the counties, and then would be the county's responsibility like the new owner. So if this property was taken by the county at a land sale, like what you're talking about forfeiture, we all inherit this cleanup liability. So, and then the state law allows the forfeited land commission to refuse property not in the best interest of all the taxpayers due to liability. This property was refused and continues to go up for tax sale every year, and due to the liability, no one will buy it back for taxes. Enter the federal government and the EPA to remediate the cleanup site for future possible use. And also, we have been in touch with Senator Graham's office and back 4 or 5 years, and Tim Scott's office. So, this has been a long process, but getting back on the national priority list, so funding can be available from the federal government for this cleanup, so it's not a Darlington County liability. It's a privately owned property But I'm just sorry, I just wanted,
If this is a health threat to our county, I've been living in Darwin County for 39 years. And really, it just sitting there and continuing to be more and more of a health threat. I'm okay with paying more taxes to clean it up in Darwin County.
well,
But I'm not okay with them spending $20 million cleaning it up and then Darwin County just take it. But I mean, that's my viewpoint on it, and that's fair, that's right. But
we're done.
One question back here.
I don't blame Darwin County for not taking it if they don't have to. But I think anybody here that lives in Darwin County would be all right with paying more money if this was a threat to their health. But if it was a threat to their health, instead of taking 3 years to even get started with a plan, or 4 years, they at least put some temporary berms or something up to keep a hurricane from washing more of these chemicals in the river. That wouldn't cost much at all.
Also.
It's not quite that easy, but I see what you're saying.
I moved dirt for a living, it ain't that hard.
Okay, what I need to do is, some of these are statements that we can take into consideration. You have a question?
Yes, it's today. Not to raise a ruckus, but if government shuts down, does that change the schedule?
The contract is already in place with the subcontractor, and they are funded, so that does not hold anything up.
Right, it's already funded, so contractors are already in
Yeah, I've
place.
already got the money, so you don't have to worry.
So we may not be around, but the contractors are still around working, okay?
Are y'all using local contractors, or y'all using out-of-state contractors?
We have a national consulting firm that will be potentially hiring local resources when we're actually doing physical work here.
Chris, you wanna get some good news tonight?
What's that?
By the time you get it done in 2026, 2027, ain't gonna be much left down there when they carry the department. So that's the only good news you can take out of this tonight.
So real quick, I want to go through this because I think some of your questions may refer back to this, which is the Superfund process. I know you saw the short version of the process that Chris put up here, but what you guys were able to pick up on the table tonight is the actual process. This is the actual Superfund process from beginning to end. We are all the way up here in the blue, right past discovery, and we are right past the final listing on the MPL in the Federal Register, which has been done. And as you can see here, this is where we are with community interviews, which is what we talked about tonight, where we put it in a community involvement plan, which will be placed on the website. We established an information repository, so we will be having the library as an information repository here, Society Hill. We will set up an administrative record, which means all of the documents that we produce for Chris to make a decision will be placed in the administrative record. And then RIFS begins. So we are right here at this pink where it says RIFS begins, where Chris talked about the RIFS and going into 2026. So as you can see, we've come a little bit, but we got all of this to go. So I'm just saying, it is a long process, but during this process, right here, this green arrow, we have additional tools and resources, workshops, redevelopment, reuse activities, fact sheets, information meetings. As you mentioned about the meeting where other people will come, if that is something that you desire, we have held open houses where we have the health department, the different phases of EPA. If you have questions about agriculture, we'll try to get someone from the Department of Agriculture. But what we would do is we would have an open house, and we would have an open house where we have different people from those different departments set up, and you can come in and talk to them. If that's something that you desire to do, we can talk to different entities and try to make that happen. In the meantime, we can give you contact information, as Chris mentioned, that you can contact these people. So I do agree, that is why we're here tonight, to get your concerns. So I was not trying to cut you off, but once we hear your concerns, we try to take those concerns back and try to get contact people to come back and talk to you about it. During this process, it is a really long process. If you guys want to have quarterly meetings, if you want to have bi-monthly meetings, If there's information to share, if we have data to share, if there's something you wanna know about and there's enough interest for us to have a meeting such as this, we will come back and have meetings during this process. Just know that throughout this process, we're not necessarily required to do it, but we do it. Our region is known for having meeting after meeting after meeting until you tell us, okay, that's enough. So if you wanna have quarterly meetings and that's something you're interested in and there's enough information or data for us to present to you, we can do that. We also have an opportunity to have what we call availability sessions. It's a little bit different from an open house, but it's still almost the same where we have people here for you to come and talk to. If there are other subject matters that come up, we will make ourselves available where we just kind of stand around and wait for y'all to come and talk to us. And we can set those up throughout the day. And part of the questionnaire is, what's the best time to have a meeting, best place to have a meeting? Is it during the day? Do we need to have one at 11 and then one at 5, one at 9 and then one at 6 if people work at night? Those are the type of questions that's on that questionnaire that Brenda and Donica would have. So if anybody wanna take an opportunity again to either answer the questions tonight on the paper, or if you wanna talk to us individually, we will be available tomorrow. Another thing that we have throughout this process on that green arrow, as the gentleman from the county mentioned, depending on what happens with the property or what's cleaned up at the property, at some point, once we know who's gonna take the property, if you guys are interested, we have contractors that can come and talk to you about reuse and redevelopment in your community and economic development. I know that's a little bit further down the road because we're not really sure what's going on with the property or who owns the property, who's going to own the property. Just know that EPA cannot take title to property, we don't hold property. But what we can do is work with the community. Once somebody is owner of the property, we can work with them and collaborate with the community, with our contractors, and talk about what would you like to see there, what's capable of being there. So that is something else that we have to offer throughout this process. Now, y'all really wanna hear the breakdown of this whole snake, or y'all wanna stop right here and ask some more questions? Okay. So this is the Superfund process. Preliminary site and assessment and investigation has been done. It's been placed on the national priorities list, which is how we got the funding to even start the process. They are still in the process of working on potentially responsible parties who may have been potentially responsible for this. Chris already talked to you about the Remedial Investigation Feasibility Study. Now, the RIFS is probably the longest part of this. So if Chris can get through it by 2026, I'm gonna tell y'all that's a milestone. We have had sites where it has taken anywhere from 10 to 20 years to get through that. So I'm just gonna say, if he can get to it by 2027, we good. What we do is after the RIFS, we have what we call a proposed plan, where the community and the public has 30 days to comment on what they wanna do to remediate the property or clean up the property. We will come back, we will have another meeting. If we have to have 2 meetings, we'll have 2 meetings, but we try to have the meetings in the midst of that 30-day comment period, because we have a transcriptionist that will come in and take note of the questions that are asked during that meeting, because it's very formal. And we have to report back on that in the record of decision. Once that is done, we have a record of decision that will be done. If anything changes in that proposed plan, we might have to do an amended ROD, where we will amend the remediation based on comments that we get back, or we may have an explanation of significant differences, which is an ESD. But both of those are changes in the remedy that's selected. And then we will have a remedial design and remedial action. We have meetings during that. The remedial design is where they go back and say, okay, this is what we've selected. Everybody's in agreement, the state, EPA, the community, which we have to have all of those agreements in place before we move forward. And they would design what that remedy is gonna look like. We will come back and have a meeting for the remedial action and say, hey, this is how many trucks are gonna be coming through here. This is what's gonna be done. These are the hours of operation. If you guys have any complaints about that, you will give them to Chris, and Chris will change that if we need to change that. So that is the RDRA, and then we will have operation and maintenance, which If there's any waste in place, we have to come back 5 years, every 5 years for in perpetuity, to check the site to make sure the remedy is still working. And then, of course, if we don't have any waste in place, we'll delete the site from the national priorities list. So I kind of explained most of this already. So unless you guys want me to go into further detail about it, I actually just broke these down bit by bit, but I just explained it on the screen. You guys want me to do that? No, I heard a no. I heard you. And that's fine. So we can go to discussion. If there are any other questions, any other things that you guys want us to answer. Again, if you did not sign in, please make sure that you signed in. Again, if you want to do the questionnaire, you can do it tonight, or if you want to make yourselves available tomorrow, let Brenda or Donica know. We will meet you and we will have a discussion about the questions on the questionnaire. Question?
I know when y'all get done, y'all turn the property over to whoever it is at that moment.
Mhm.
At what point do y'all take control of this site? Or, I mean, at some point, y'all got to have control over it during this whole process.
We never take the property. We
No,
have,
not take the property, take control over.
we don't take control. We have access to the property.
Okay.
That's it.
Are you gonna have a local office here?
I won't have a local office, but you can feel free to call me on my cell anytime you want.
Stay here.
No, our contractors will probably be out in the field, and at some point, Chris can probably bring them in to introduce them to you all, who you will see in the field, and they will have a direct connect to Chris.
During
Chris-
the actual cleanup, if we gotta be on site for, 12 months or so, we will have an office at that point.
Right.
Chris, like the people that's down there now, doing what they're doing. At what point will y'all come in, man? At some point, you have to take control. I mean, you can't have them doing what they wanna do while your guys is in there cleaning up, doing what they wanna do. So that's why I'm asking, is at what point does that happen that you have authority over the site?
We don't take it. So if you wanted to acquire the property and put something there, we would try to work with you so that you didn't get in our way and that you didn't cause a mess and then take on liability so that you're now one of the responsible parties for cleanup, right? So that's really how it works. We have access to the property and that's it. Don't take control over it. We're not the owners.
I'm talking about during the cleanup.
Yeah, not even cleanup.
Okay.
They tell you contractors have 24-hour security. They come back and put it because of
There's a question back here.
So, when you guys are out there testing,
Sure.
are you going to have some kind of security with you?
We're kind of working through that. That may be one of the solutions. I know, we've heard there's been, scrappers out there that are stealing things, setting things on fire. So perhaps when we're out there, maybe early on, we'll have security, or potentially work with local law enforcement, to help deter individuals from coming on site. Because we definitely don't want anyone out there that doesn't need to be there while we're working. So we take health and safety seriously. Okay.
Right here.
Are you the actual folks that are gonna help us get our wells tested and get ourselves tested for the sludge that's been put in the field?
So the state is doing a lot of the well testing, and then we are using one of EPA's laboratory to analyze the samples, and so we have access to that data, and as soon as we find out that a location has an exceedance, we come out there to remediate that situation, which right now is putting on a water filtration system. I know the county is also working to install water lines to some of these areas as well, so that you don't have to be on that groundwater. Like I said before, if you have concerns about your health, and potential chemicals that you may have been exposed to and what that could mean for you, I recommend you talk to ATSDR and we can give you that contact info.
In '05, we had a family of 3, 2 of us had cancer that year. And I called the DHEC in Columbia and asked if that was dangerous to our health. And the lady that spoke with me said that it was a ground builder and that it was perfectly safe to do one application immediately to disc it in. I told her, I said, that's not what's happening here.
it's so bad that you can't even hardly smell. It smells like, does yours smell like dead chickens or something?
No, our water
Or
smells fine.
sewage?
Our water smells fine, it was just what they were
What?
slinging out of the trucks.
There's nothing coming from that mill right now being dumped on nobody's property. Nothing's coming out of Galey and Lord and dumping on nobody's property right now.
We know it's not,
Yeah, we know it's not.
coming out of Galey,
Coming out of there.
but there
Okay.
is some stuff, there's sludge that they're spreading out of North Carolina.
Okay, well,
that they're
that's,
shipping in.
okay, I understand, but look, we
That's
gonna,
not, that's
me and
got nothing to do
Mr.
with Galey Lord.
Me and Mr. Tanya's gonna get together, and we're gonna set up a meeting, and we're gonna have the people, the agricultural people, and we're gonna get the people for the health.
Right,
we're
and
gonna have another
so
meeting.
if you guys are interested in that, we can get in contact with some folks and we will send a notification back out for what we consider an open house or an availability session where we can give ATSDR, the state, EPA, and based on some of the other questions, we will try to get contacts to come back out and talk to you guys about your concerns. Just know that different entities have roles and responsibilities, and we come and listen to you guys, but we have to take it back to somebody else. We're not the person to answer those questions about health. We protect human health and the environment, but we're not a health organization. That would be Agency for Toxic Substance Disease Registry, or CDC, Centers for Disease. And they also work with your local health department as well. So if that's something that they need to get started, we can talk to the contact person and try to get them to come out here and do that.
If you don't know what the health problem is to protect us from, then how do you know what to protect us from?
Because we use the data and they do risk assessment, health risk assessments, based on the data that's collected. That is how they know what to protect you from.
Then do you know what risk we are associated with this?
That is why he's gonna do the data. That's what we're trying to find out now.
That's where we will figure out all that
Exactly.
stuff.
And that's why I say a lot of the questions that you have, we don't have the answers to tonight, but that is why we're here to tell you what we're doing. So we'll be collecting data and have that information available to you. And like I said, with that green arrow, if there's ever any questions about something that we can't answer, we'll try to get you a contact person. Yes, sir.
The map, the small map I see here on the site aerial for the soil and water contaminants, how definite is the area, the line that y'all have drawn around? Is it kind of permanent now? or-
The boundaries?
The boundaries of how far out?
It's not permanent. It's not permanent right now.
Wherever
Like-
the contamination
We're
goes, we,
still searching how far out this area is going. and
That
how-
is what Chris getting ready to do. He's
Yeah.
getting ready to chase it. So
That's-
that boundary,
that's only the physical property boundary that's on that map right now.
right.
Yeah.
So once Chris starts chasing it, he'll start from that right there, and they're gonna chase it out to wherever there's contamination. And that boundary will change as they go out until they do clean, and then once they get clean, they go out a little bit further to make sure it's still clean, and then they will set a boundary.
Is this line, is this something that'll be on this, Superfund, Galey Board website? Will that be some kind of updates every month or?
Yeah, as we get data in, and like I said, our conceptual site model, we'll be able to post a 3D model of what it looks like beneath the ground, where the contaminants are. We'll make that all that
Just
information.
getting started, good.
Yeah.
Yeah, we are just getting started. Please know we are just getting started. This is the beginning for us, and so it's not the end. So we will be around for a very long time. So if there aren't any more questions, thank you guys for coming. We will be around for a few minutes. And like I said, if you guys want to talk tomorrow, get with Donica and Brenda so we can set up a meeting with you guys. Thank you.